Hi, everyone. So, we're here for the second session with our founder, Gilles Fransen at Digital Ventures. Welcome, Gilles. I am Elena, sales manager at Digital Ventures, and today we would like to go over an overview of our services to really explain what we can offer to our clients and how we bring the best out of your digital adoption platforms and programs. So, Gilles, let's dive right into it. Please give us an overview of what WalkMe services do we offer to our clients?
Absolutely. WalkMe Services is our core competency and what we really do and are experts in as Digital Ventures. So we have been implementing WalkMe now for 6, 7 years as a company, and personally, I've been working with it for 10 years now. What we do as services is on one side, we do proof of concept or proof of value for customers that want to start small, that want to try it out. We can do that either in a hosted format where we host the proof of value, or we can do it as a pilot where there is already licenses for the company. So from there, which is more like early sales cycle, early project cycle, we then move to the normal implementation project. So implementing WalkMe the first time on the first application, implement that, and then afterwards go into continuous support mode. So we could continue supporting you on an ad hoc basis, on a recurring basis, or have even a full outsourced model where Digital Ventures is working as your WalkMe or digital adoption center of excellence. So that is where Digital Ventures covers the full life cycle of digital adoption of any WalkMe engagement.
Do we also offer any complementary services to our clients that are outside of WalkMe?
Yes, we also provide services outside of the pure WalkMe scope. Because with the acquisition from SAP, we are looking at this on a more holistic basis. So we look at helping customers to firstly document their processes. So make sure the processes are documented. That could be either in SAP Signavio, but it could also be simply in Visio or a tool like Lucidchart. Then, based on those processes, we help you create knowledge articles. So make sure the knowledge of the different SMEs is properly covered. So that is another service that we provide. And then from there, we basically look how do we bring that knowledge to your users. And that could be still with classical learning, like e-learning, classroom learning, simulations for which we leverage the new WalkMe Learning product, or it could be through digital adoption and the WalkMe service. So having training onboarding or automated processes. So that's the real WalkMe implementation. And then the last part, which I have started doing recently, is looking at, okay, maybe we can even go a step further and look at developing and deploying AI agents, which we are then orchestrating through WalkMe and the action bar and WalkMe X functionalities. So that is where we come full circle, complementing our core WalkMe expertise with covering the full life cycle from knowledge and learning and process perspective.
So, really looking at it from a 360 perspective. That's great.
Absolutely.
Now, on to one of the most asked questions. How long does a project take? So, let's go over how do we estimate how long a project will take? What factors do we consider?
I think there's two approaches that we typically take when implementing WalkMe. So on one side, you could follow WalkMe or implement WalkMe in parallel to your platform implementation. So this is typically the case when you're implementing S/4HANA or SuccessFactors or Salesforce or Workday or any application. And there basically WalkMe follows the implementation cycle, and the way we typically scope the project there is looking at the number of processes that need to be covered, and then looking at the platform complexity, because some platforms are easier to build on than others. And that is how we typically then scope WalkMe as part of the platform implementation. Then the other approach that you can take, which is also very common, is when we implement WalkMe on top of platforms that are already live. So where already your users are working again with Salesforce, SuccessFactors, S4, and then we can look at it from two angles. On one side, you can still look at, okay, what do people need to know from a training onboarding perspective? Also come from the other angle and look at what are, let's say, the top 5, top 10 common issues that users are struggling with. How can we solve for them with WalkMe? Or are there specific processes where we want to go straight to automation to create even more value? There the scoping of the project is typically more on what do we want to achieve and how fast do we want to achieve it. So those projects we can typically implement in 6, 8 to 12 weeks, because you can very rapidly go live with a handful of use cases and then continue building from there to create even more value.
Okay, great. And now on to the second most asked question, pricing. So what are the factors we consider when pricing an implementation project?
Different factors to consider when implementing WalkMe from a pricing perspective is we typically look at what we call launch. So that is the initial setup of the platform. So what is needed to technically set up WalkMe? What needs to be done from a technical scoping? How do you deploy it within your organization? So that is what we call launch. Then the second question that we ask is how much content do you want us to build? So that could be a handful of use cases, but we're also doing projects where we cover 100, 200, 300 processes and use cases. So that is where we look more at the implementation build effort. Then the third question is, do we enable or train your team or some of your team members on using WalkMe? So that's the third aspect of it. And then we already from the beginning start discussing what kind of support is needed post go live. What's your long-term strategy? Because that is really important. WalkMe is not a one-off. It's not something that you just implement once and then it's done. No, you need to think from the beginning, from a strategic perspective, on how are you gonna deploy and support this on a longer term basis and embed it in your company processes. So that's the fourth aspect of it.
Great. And when a client is looking at purchasing licenses, how are they going to expect it to be set up? Is it by number of users, number of apps, or are there specificities?
Typically, the license model works as follows. So for the core WalkMe product, which is WalkMe Web, it works that we look at the number of applications and the number of users per application. So you could license for one application, for example, SuccessFactors for 500 users, or SuccessFactors for 5,000 or 100,000 users. Could add a second or third platform for it with a different number of user counts. And then typically what we have seen, once you get to 3, 4, 5 applications, it usually makes sense to look at it from an enterprise perspective and look at an enterprise license agreement, because then you can cover all applications in your organization for a specific number of users. So that's how the license model works for a core WalkMe product. Then On top of that, you can add additional analytics modules like WalkMe Discovery. We can add to that WalkMe for Desktop, so we can add that as well. We have now the new WalkMe Learning product. So there's then a couple of add-on modules as well.
Great. When a client is considering purchasing licenses, what are the differences from purchasing it from WalkMe SAP directly versus through a partner such as us? What should they be thinking about? What are the differences?
I think in terms of what the licenses cover, there should not be a difference. So you can purchase either directly from SAP or through a partner like Digital Ventures. I think it probably depends more on the situation the client is in, existing relationship with SAP or not. So there also we see different things playing out in the market. So in the end, for us as a partner, it doesn't matter too much if you buy directly from SAP or if you buy via us as a partner. It really depends on what works best for the customer. So that's the going in principle. Typically, what we have seen more in the larger enterprises, licenses get bought more directly from SAP because it can also be bundled as part of the overall license agreements that are in place with SAP. So that makes their contracting and negotiating prices obviously more easy if you look at it in a bigger picture. For mid-size customers, it often makes sense to buy via a partner like Digital Ventures, hopefully, because there it's easier to make the negotiations and to go through the process and have us as a dedicated partner also with SAP to get the licenses done. Plus, there's options to package parts of the licenses with parts of the services within the licenses agreement. So that are different options that partners can play with. And I think it depends on the customer specific situation, what's the right road to take.
Putting ourselves in clients' shoes, are there any specific topics that they should be keen on thinking about before purchasing to make sure they're set up for success?
I think it comes down to identifying what do you want to achieve? What is your strategy with WalkMe, with digital adoption in general, and what does your roadmap look like? Because you can start small, also purchase less licenses. But I think WalkMe is really something that you need to think of longer term. So for me, that is the key important thing. Think about what's your high level strategy, what do you want to achieve, and how does your 12, 24, 36-month roadmap look like? Because I think that will also drive which licenses you need and at what point in time. And that way, you can also leverage that in any license negotiations to make sure you get the best deal and the right licenses at the right time.
Let's talk about EnableNow. EnableNow will gradually but surely be going out of scene. What is the timeline look like at the moment? What should they be thinking about in order to transition smoothly from EnableNow to WalkMe?
How to transition from EnableNow to WalkMe? The decision has already been communicated that EnableNow will be replaced by WalkMe Learning. So any development into EnableNow has been stopped. So it's been put into maintenance mode and it will be phased out by 2030 latest. So all EnableNow customers need to start thinking about a transition scenario. What is clear from a WalkMe Learning perspective is the product will be launched on 18th November 2025. So it will be initially launched. There will also be over the coming weeks, there will be also pricing communications as well as transition scenarios. So today we don't have those details yet. We can pick that up in one of the next sessions. But ideally, all customers start thinking about that transition scenario. Technically speaking, any EnableNow content can be seamlessly migrated into the WalkMe learning product. So that is the key message there. The second part of EnableNow, which is SAP Companion, that content needs to be rebuilt in WalkMe. So there's at the moment no technical transition possible, but from discussing with quite a few customers, there's not that many customers that really have a lot of SAP Companion content, and there as a WalkMe partner, we can very seamless and efficiently migrate and rebuild that content into WalkMe. So that is currently the state with the transition of EnableNow to WalkMe.
Thank you so much, Gilles, for your time in today's session. We'll see each other next week for more questions.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.